Hi guys, I'm Corinne from wheelAIR, the wheelchair cooling backrest. Today I'm here with Susie, who is an occupational therapist, and also with Sophie, who's been using wheelAIR for a year now. Today we're here to talk about two often overlooked issues for wheelchair users, which is overheating and oversweating, and how wheelAIR can both prevent this and help manage this. As a wheelchair user throughout the day, you can become uncomfortably warm for a number of reasons that causes general discomfort. We actually identified two other categories, which is oversweating if you sweat too much, and overheating for those who don't sweat and build up too much internal heat. We're not here to help just one condition. We can help every single wheelchair user that has any body temperature regulation problems. wheelAIR can help both prevent and manage all of it. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. If you want to find out exactly how much we cool down, well, it's 16% in 30 minutes. And you can just look at our website at wheelair.co.uk. But today we're here to speak to Susie and Sophie, of course. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Hi. Let's start by hearing a bit about the two of you. Sophie, do you want to start and tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm Sophie. I have cerebral palsy. I've had it since I was born. I was born really early. I work at a university. So I deal with students all day, get kind of hot dealing with them when it's really busy and stuff. So
exams are happening.
Yeah, so it's helpful.
Okay, what about you, Susie?
I'm Susie. I've been an occupational therapist since 2000, and I've been working for the majority of my career with people with spinal cord injury.
Okay, amazing. So when we talked a bit about overheating and oversweating, as I mentioned, how do you experience this in your profession? What does this mean to you?
That is quite important because you'd always talk about posture and things like that, but not necessarily overheating and oversweating. So the overheating and oversweating is a very significant consequence of, especially someone with spinal cord injury, whose mechanism to be able to regulate their body temperature is affected. And I've seen it firsthand, the impact that overheating has on someone's ability to carry out their daily activities and for their general well-being as well. And not just the ability to physically carry out tasks or activities or aspirations, but the safety and the medical consequences as well in terms of skin integrity, blood pressure, feeling of wellness and things like that. So yeah, it is a significant issue, and often issues around posture are very easily identified when you're a wheelchair user, but the slightly more hidden factors like overheating are still significant, but do need attention.
Yeah, okay. Sophie, with cerebral palsy, how do you experience this overheating or oversweating, or which one of the two do you experience most?
For me, it is overheating. I find it more so when I'm moving around manually propelling my wheelchair. I get very hot very quickly. And then kind of have to take a break to kind of cool down a little bit. And when you're trying to go about day-to-day life, it's quite difficult to just stop and take a break every time you feel a bit too hot and things like that. So,
would you say that's what you usually do? You would take a break and pause?
Yeah. So take a break, pause, cool down, take on some water, and then feel a bit more comfortable and carry on then.
And what would happen if you weren't having a break? What's the reaction that your body has to overheating?
So if I get too hot, my body kind of just can't function very well. So my muscles start going into spasm, which is really painful and uncomfortable. And my whole body just doesn't really like it. My legs kind of start doing what they want to do, and I kind of lose control of the muscles a little bit, just because everything kind of goes a bit tense and a bit tight, and it's not comfortable at all. But yeah, as soon as you start to cool down, it's quite amazing how quickly your body feels okay again.
Yeah, okay. And do you feel like this is typically for cerebral palsy, or would you say these symptoms are quite broad with different conditions?
I think it's broad with numerous neurological conditions. Certainly the spasms and the consequences of overheating, and the impact of the pain, the overheating, the body's changing, and certainly someone with spinal cord injury, in my experience, if they are uncomfortable, do have increased pain or are overheating, that pain and that discomfort triggers spasms or can trigger spasms in people that suffer spasms. And that can also then affect their posture while seated in their wheelchair. If someone has quite strong spasms, that will have a significant impact on their posture in their wheelchair. And it may even have an impact upon their caregiver as well, if they rely on someone to help look after them, and help to have to reposition themselves in the wheelchair to make them be sitting more comfortably. And not just the spasms, but for anyone with a neurological condition, I think the impact of overheating and over sweating is significant.
Yeah. So let's start talking a bit about wheelAIR. Sophie, what was your first reaction when you heard about the wheelAIR, and how did you hear about it?
Okay, so I first heard about the wheelAIR by watching Dragon's Den on TV. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Listened to it more and thought, why has somebody not thought about doing this before? I suppose it's the type of thing for me, until you hear about it, you don't realise that it's something that would benefit you. And then when you hear about it, it's all you can think about. Oh. And so for me, I then started like looking on Google and doing stuff like that, and then contacted you, and
and here
we are.
What about you?
I was really excited to hear about it, and I don't actually recall when that happened, but I was really excited, and I thought, brilliant. I was quite relieved, because I was like a bit like Sophie. I was like, why? You kind of realise, why didn't this happen before? But also how brilliant that someone's actually been able to do that. And having had sort of first-hand experience of people overheating as wheelchair users, and the impact that has on their lifestyle and on their well-being, I was like, well, that's brilliant. Let's see what that's all about. So amazing. I was all over it. Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about a situation where you've encountered overheating or oversweating, or both?
Yeah, well, both. Numerous times. One that sticks in my mind is when I was on a hand cycling sort of training exercises, and a paraplegic T1, so quite high level paraplegic, and his ability or inability to sweat most definitely led to issues related to overheating, and that was really significant on our training rise. It was in the summer, and in fact in any minimal to moderate exercise, his body temperature would begin to rise, and he'd find it very difficult to manage that without any mechanism to reduce the heat. And certainly on our bike riding exercises, it was my job. I was the pack horse. I had to carry extra water, and literally had a backpack with bottles of water, so that the only way he found he could cool down sufficiently enough to then feel better and be able to carry on, because we'd have to stop and allow him to kind of recover, is pour water physically over him, and spray him with water to allow that evaporation cooling effect on his skin. And it had to always be on his head and over his shoulders and down his back. And that's how we had to manage his overheating. It also happened walking around the streets in a warmer climate, or just being vaguely strenuous, and for that he would often have cooling sprays and things like that. But the water was effective, but obviously not.
Because I can imagine, it's not great if you're completely soaked in water all the time.
No, and then it can cause issues with the skin integrity, and is a risk to skin sort of excess friction, and so shear forces on the skin, and then potentially breaking down the skin to cause a skin insult, a skin ulcer, which is far from what you want. And he would get in any overheating experience, he would get quite fretful. It's quite stressful. You become consumed by what's happening to your body, and you lose control. He would often have spasms that would affect his position in the chair, and occasionally affect how he was pushing as well. It was a detrimental thing to be occurring, and it limits what task you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And would you think those consequences are the same if you oversweat?
Yeah. So then the similar consequences of oversweating. So there's still the same stress, anxiety, and body effects of a bit of spasm, but the skin is affected more so in oversweating because of the increase in moisture. Fluid and moisture on the skin. And although that can have a cooling effect, that's the mechanism of sweating, actually for a wheelchair dependent person, that's going to affect the skin's properties when you're sat on the skin, affect the skin's properties of protection, and can affect the derma of the skin and cause shear either on the clothing or either on the cushion that you're sitting on. And as that overheating and that oversweating process develops and those spasms maybe kick in, you've got extra shear and extra risk to skin insults to that person. So yeah, it is really significant, but quite often overlooked. Yeah. When I did our hand cycling experience, I knew about overheating and oversweating because I work with it and I was living with it, but the people we were cycling with had no idea that this was a phenomenon or a consequence of a neurological condition. Yeah. That they just didn't have the ability to sweat, and therefore had this problem. At the moment where you're overheating, as Sophie can probably relate to, you become a bit consumed by what's happening to your body. You are beginning to lose a little bit of control about what's happening to yourself, and whatever task it is that you're trying to do, whatever goal, whether you're working or cycling or whatever it is, that becomes very difficult. And it's once the overheating starts, it's really difficult to manage that if you haven't got the mechanism by which to do that. So if there is no shade, or if there's no water, or if there is no mechanism, it's really difficult to slow that process down. And so for something, a concept like, well, not even a concept, the product like wheelAIR, that's a real tangible, real-time solution to quite a difficult problem. Mm-hmm. So for the overheating, it can make someone feel a lot of loss of control, very anxious. It can be quite stressful. It can be physically upsetting, physically painful, because of the spasms, or just because of the lack of blood pressure, the fatigue. It's exhausting, and it's really life limiting. You're not able to participate in the activity that you were doing or are doing. It can be overridingly probably quite stressful experience, overheating, if you don't have a mechanism by which to calm it down, to cool it down.
So, Sophie, you have some of these management issues with overheating that Susie was just talking about. Can you talk us through some of the experiences of how you experience overheating and how wheelAIR's helped us?
wheelAIR's really changed it, and no pun intended, it's been a breath of fresh air. It really has. I mean, for me, when I overheat, I get quite bad spasms in my back and in my legs, and it's quite painful. Whereas now with the wheelAIR, if I'm starting to get too warm, I can just turn it on, and very quickly I'm cooling down and I'm feeling a lot better. And for me, just using the wheelAIR over the last year, I've even changed how I use it. So when I first got it, I'd only use it by the time I was too hot and needed to cool down. Whereas now I'm kind of using it in a more preventative way. So I'm thinking, I'm beginning to get a bit warm. Let's use it now before I overheat and get too hot.
Maybe a bit of a difficult question, but can you describe exactly the feeling you get when you turn the wheelAIR on? Like, how does the cooling make you feel?
How does it make me feel? Relief is probably the first word that comes to mind, because I can think, okay, in a few minutes I'm going to feel okay again, I'm going to feel comfortable. Because when you do start to overheat, you in a way you get quite anxious and start to panic a little bit. As much as you're used to it happening, your body still tries to panic and tense up, and you've kind of got to remind yourself that it's okay, nothing bad's going to happen. And I think for me, having the wheelAIR is great, because I can just think, touch of a button, I know in a couple of minutes I'm going to feel so much better. Yeah,
the ease of mind.
Yeah.
Amazing. I also want to have a bit about over-sweating, because you both talked about overheating. We actually worked on a case together, Susie and I, about someone who was over-sweating. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's a gentleman, but he's also with spinal cord injury, a paraplegic level, and he's struggled with adjusting to living with spinal cord injury, but this was just another piece of the puzzle that he was really struggling with. And when I finally heard about wheelAIR, I was like, I know exactly. I know. Fingers crossed. I really hoped it would work for him, and it did. And it was definitely a very important piece of his puzzle of putting his life back together, because before generally speaking, he was finding it very difficult to go out and about. He was wearing, 3 different t-shirts a day just because he was sweating so much. It made him feel really uncomfortable, quite self-conscious. It sort of affected his confidence to go out and about, and affected his approach to how he was going to tackle what activities he was going to do that day, because he was preoccupied with what his body was going to do to him. And we tried the backrest on that day, and it instantly, he was like, oh, I can feel it. It just feels great. And he also had a lot of pain associated with the excess heat. And I've had dialogue with him since, and he's using it every day. He uses it a bit like Sophie, so he has it on low most of the time. And over this hot summer, it was really effective for him. And he was able to go about his daily routine feeling much, much more comfortable, much more equipped to kind of deal with what he wanted to do that day. And then if the pain increases, or the heat increases, or he feels he wants extra relief, he'll turn it up to the higher power. And he definitely felt extra relief from that, much more comfortable, and much more in control, and had a much more autonomy about his day-to-day.
Okay, amazing.
Activities.
I know it was very exciting to work on that together. As a healthcare professional, what do you see as the biggest plus about wheelAIR?
There's quite a few pluses to the wheelAIR, actually, but I think for me as an OT, someone who wants to enable someone to fulfill their life activities and get busy living, for a product that's available to help them feel more comfortable and more equipped to go about their daily life without any interruptions or any worries or anxieties about what their body's going to do to them that day, and they can carry on their day uninterrupted. That to me is a real bonus, and something that's important to someone to carry out their life uninterrupted. And for their well-being and for their physical health, it's also really quite essential to regard these lesser known consequences of neurological conditions and wheelchair life of the overheating.
So would you say it has a wider impact than just cooling the person down? Yeah,
definitely. And I really believe in the product, and really believe that yes, it's factors related to their skin care, the factors related to the associated pains and discomforts, which can cause spasms, which can affect someone's posture, which can also lead to skin issues, and managing a certain level of psychological wellness too, so they feel more equipped and more motivated and empowered, and in control of their bodies to go about their daily life.
Yeah. Exactly. Do you feel like you can relate to this, Sophie?
Yeah, 100% agree with everything Susie's just said. No, absolutely. And I think for me as well, the way the wheelAIR looks as well, so it's not obvious that you've got this great addition to your wheelchair, but you know it's there and it can help you. And
it's exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, and with our example that we used earlier, it was really easy to fit to the chair. Over the top of the tension adjustable backrest, and the quality of the materials are really good, and the appearance is really discreet, and really professional looking. So
thanks very much. I'd like to hear that. To any occupational therapists or physiotherapists or doctors watching today, who would you say they should be prescribing or recommending the wheelAIR to?
I think anybody that is experiencing the complications of heat regulation as a result of a neurological condition, or someone who is largely wheelchair bound as a result of poor mobility, and they want to be able to prescribe that for those people. I think it's a really important piece of something on our equipment lists to be considering, because it's something that it's easily fitted to a wheelchair, it's easily retrofitted as well, and it's cost effective in terms of managing these symptoms that these people have, and has a significant impact upon their quality of life and their ability to carry out activities of daily living, and just getting on with their lifestyle without being interrupted from these complications. So yeah, I think it's an important thing to consider.
Thank you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you thought that was both fun and informative. If you want to know more about our clinical indications, go check out our documents on our website. And for any more information, it's wheelAIR.co.uk, or you know where to find us on social media. Bye.